All right, class, first thing I'd like you to do is make sure that at your desk you have a marker, a whiteboard, and an eraser. If you don't, let me know.
This is Zach Kiefer. He teaches sophomore math at Morton East High School in Cicero, Illinois.
All right, so here's the game. Listen up.
We visited his class last year in May during finals prep.
Most days, you put me through a mental grind. You try and break me mentally. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, I would agree. Today, not only do you get to continue to do that, you get to break me physically, okay? So this is my favorite activity at the end of the year. It's called Break the Teacher. How this works, all 5 of my classes.
So Mr. Kiefer separates the class into groups and gives them various problems to solve, stuff that will be on the final exam. When every group has solved the problem, one lucky student gets to throw a sticky ball with Velcro at a big paper target on the wall, trying to hit a high number.
Like that. That one hit like about a 10. So then I have to come over here and I have to do 10 push-ups. Your goal is to make me do as many as possible because you want to break me. If you hit a 20...
If any class manages to make him do so many push-ups that he tires out so he can't do any more push-ups, they win a prize for all 5 of his class periods.
Think of the game as all 5 of my class periods versus the teacher. So you are working with first period, you are working with second period, you are working with...
Early in the day, the prize is pretty amazing.
If first period beat me, every single one of you would get a 5.0 on the final.
I don't know if that's actually allowed, but I've also trained too much to lose the first period on push-ups, so I know I can beat that.
As the day goes on, the prizes get more realistic, but less exciting. Pizza for finals, or drinks at finals, or candy for everybody.
If I survive till 6th period, you all just get Jolly Ranchers. That's a pretty boring treat, right? I've never made it to the end, so if I make it...
The bottom line is every class is trying to break Mr. Kiefer, and the only way to do that is by solving math problems.
All right, so we're going to start at number 1, just because it's so long since you've seen trig. There should be a SOHCAHTOA. Sine, cosine,
And now you're going to do -5 times 2.
Find the missing side. 5. Big old 5 to start the day. Figure out, is X on the top or X is on the bottom?
Oh, it's like that. Yay.
15. There we go. About time. All right, let's keep it going. I don't want to be waiting on you guys because I want to be doing push-ups too.
This goes on all day.
15. 15. You think I'm tired? Just getting started.
5 periods of math. Talking smack, thwacks, and push-ups.
Ugh. Not even tough. Not even tough at all. 470 push-ups so far.
How did you not give up?
I don't know. All right, next problem.
Of course, his students love it. It's entertaining, it's fun, and it keeps them focused on solving math problems.
Hey, class is almost over. Are we done?
No, one more problem.
Oh, okay.
I'm about to hit that bullseye.
10 minutes to go. I'm not losing.
I'm Jesse Dukes, this is the Homework Machine, and I have Justin Reich with me. Justin, how many push-ups do you think you could do or would you do in the name of teaching your students?
When I was 24 and a classroom teacher, or now?
Very good point. Give me both. Could you do 500 at 24?
No, there's no way that ever in my life I have been able to do 500 push-ups. So I would have had to re-rig the sticky target with sort of lower consequences.
Like 1 to 5 or something like that.
Yeah, maybe a couple hundred over the course of the day.
Well, beyond being physically impressive, what we just heard is Zach Kiefer's way of adapting to AI. And the way he thinks about it is keeping his students' attention. They have a lot of distractions. They might be distracted by their phones. They might be distracted by one another. His classrooms are large and challenging to manage. They might be distracted by AI, particularly if they get stuck on a math problem and they need some help. So Zach's strategy is to just use his energy to be more compelling than whatever might distract his students through pure youthful energy, upper body strength, and basically not having a social life.
I try and be that tool of like, hey, don't cheat, just ask me questions. And if you ask me questions, I'm going to be there for you very quickly.
Zach Kiefer told us he's pretty much on call around the clock. He's there to help his students before school, during lunch, after school.
Or if you're at home and you're working on a problem, send me a Teams message.
So Teams, you probably know, is this online platform used by some schools for communicating and sharing assignments and stuff. And Mr. Kiefer spends a lot of time on Teams.
A student messaged me at 7 p.m. and they're like, hey, Mr. Kiefer, I'm struggling on this problem. How do you do this? I'm like, oh, hey, here you go. And their first response is, why is you online at 7 p.m.? And I laughed and I said, well, I'm like Batman, except instead of a bat signal, I respond to a Teams message. The funniest part was they're like, bro, you is not Batman. You built like the Riddler. And so, all right, let's get back to the math questions you have here.
Zach Kiefer is rather thin, athletic, but slender, svelte. He doesn't have the Batman bodybuilder build. So I don't know, Justin. Any reflection on what it means if our young teachers are putting so much of their body and so much of their time and so much of their energy into keeping their students from distraction and keeping their students from using AI?
Well, he won't be able to do that for the entirety of his career if he decides to make a lifelong commitment to teaching. At some point, you just can't do that many push-ups. And you can't rely on sort of youthful, frenetic energy to cajole your students into compliance. At some point, you need to come up with other kinds of classroom management strategies to keep folks learning and engaged.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems pretty ingenious to me that like that moment where he's like, "Hey guys, do you want to be done doing math review?"
No,
and they're like,
one
more problem. I mean, that's kind of ingenious, but
that's what you're looking for.
And I don't know. I wanted to share the story with you because I feel like it raises a theme of teachers who are already really putting everything they got into, designing good learning experiences for their students and trying to keep their students engaged. They're already struggling with large classrooms where, it's hard to keep everybody's attention. And then AI is just one more thing on top of it, one more added challenge.
Yeah, Jesse, the timing of the arrival of generative AI in some respects couldn't have been worse. I mean, it was really right. November 30th, 2022 is just on the tail end of the pandemic when all the students were back and were kind of sorting through all of the challenges and difficulties they had at home, readjusting to social life. I mean, for many teachers, that was actually the worst, the most difficult year of the pandemic.
And then to have the following year be one where this new disruption starts. It's been a hard stretch for the teaching profession, and it shows in a number of statistics that we track over time, like really high rates of chronic absenteeism. Teacher morale is probably at a 50-year low. So this really challenging moment in education also overlaps with this extraordinary societal enthusiasm for new generative AI that Silicon Valley, AI developers, education technology entrepreneurs are coming out and saying, this is a new tool that's going to transform the social order, and it may be able to fix all of these challenges in schools as well.
On top of that, I'll add that many teachers say that their school or district is understaffed. Many of the core classes might have 30, 35, or even more students in them. Some school districts have had to pay a fine because their class sizes violate state laws or union contracts. Often schools don't have enough substitute teachers, and the teachers tell us they have to sub for their colleagues during their planning time. They might be missing administrators, custodial staff, people at the district level. So in the midst of a school system that can feel strained to the breaking point, it's the teachers that have to figure out how to deal with AI. And that can strain the teachers physically, intellectually, emotionally. And I think my favorite story of somebody trying their best to figure it out and push through that strain is Sarah Falls. Sarah Falls is a veteran teacher at Abraham Lincoln High School in San Francisco. She's been there over 20 years, and in fact, at least one teacher there was her student as a teenager. Our colleague Holly McDede first spoke to her last fall, and then I did a couple of follow-up interviews. Sarah's outdoorsy. She sent me some camping tips for Northern California. Last year, she was the English department chair. She taught 2 English classes, 1 AP English, and the journalism class. And when I visited her this past February, it was publication day for the newspaper.
We've got copy editors, we've got our editors-in-chief over there, our page editors, our website people, our PR and communications person, and then we'll send it off to our publisher who's out in Hayward, who will deliver the papers to us in a couple of days.
So it is a print newspaper.
It is a print newspaper. Do
Awesome.
you want a copy?
Yes.
I really love the classes that I teach. They're sort of my dream classes. I know that we're close, at least in certain sections, but I'm going to check in with each section and just see where we're at. I love running the school newspaper. Again, it's kids who are writing and have a real authentic audience, and so have a reason to be deeply invested in their work. Even if they struggle with it, they have, a motivation to make it the best they can, and usually they learn a lot about themselves in the process.
So the students are spread throughout the room. Some are working on their own. Some are working in little groups of 2 or 3 on their part of the newspaper.
We're working on news together. Like, we have a section just for news, and then
I'm copy editing, so I just check the grammar and stuff. I like checking over it because I'm kind of like a perfectionist almost.
Mostly, Sarah's just off to the side in her desk, grading papers or doing other things like that. Occasionally, the students come over and get some help from her, but mostly they are editing and they are interacting with one another as this happens.
Yeah. Well, your graphics look fine. I can't comment on that because Zoe is much better at this than I am, and so are you.
So the paper has, sort of like local restaurant reviews. It has some news reporting, some sports reporting. They also have this back page section in addition to their more serious reporting that's like pure fun. And they have a kind of like a Spotify playlist with songs. And then they also have this lookalike feature where they have photos of students who they claim look like certain celebrities.
Celebrity lookalikes. I can zoom in for you. One of our students looks a lot like Jesus. I think you'll agree. Emma Stone, Ariana Grande.
We don't really know what Jesus looked like.
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
Are they doing the eyebrows like that on purpose?
I think so. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just how he is.
Yeah.
And obviously LeBron James. I'm sure it's uncanny.
Oh, that one's a little harder to see, I have to admit. This student looks nothing like LeBron James. Like, I'm pretty sure he's like not a black kid, like no beard, long hair, kind of skinny. And the students were hilarious. This was their deadline day. They were under pressure and they were working hard and they were a little bit stressed out, but they were having fun and they were laughing. And they were aware that I was following them around with a microphone, so they didn't miss any opportunities to troll me a little bit.
This is too much work. I say for the next issue, we AI everything.
She's going to give you a lot of...
So the hope is to be a cheerleader while also holding high expectations. I have high expectations for my kids. I've been here long enough that I know what they're capable of, and I want to push them. And some kids, that's really scary because they've made it to their senior year, sometimes without being pushed very much. But this is... Remember I asked you early on, do you want the angle to be the showcase or do you want it to be more about the performances?
And I was like, yeah, it's the showcase. And I was like, I can update that one specific.
I have my students journal, for instance, not every day, but often. We start class by just like a handwritten, I say 10 minutes of nonstop writing, even if you have to sort of write, I don't know what to write next. If you keep your hand moving and you're getting into the flow, the inertia of writing rather than I call it blank page inertia, you're going to start to create your own fluency and you're going to start to trust your own mind more. You have to remind them that it's okay for it to be hard. If it were easy, it would mean that you already knew everything, and what a waste of time that would be. That the whole point of learning is to struggle and maybe fail and then figure out how to learn from that.
And that's why she says initially she had no use for AI in her classroom or at her school. And back in the spring of 2024, like a year and a half ago, when teachers were starting to realize that there were issues with academic integrity and students bypassing learning, she started thinking about how they were going to address AI and what kind of policy, public-facing policy or student-facing policy they were going to implement.
And I was talking to my department about how do we articulate to students about why and what the issues of this are and how we are going to detect it. And my staff was sort of like, well, I use it for this, or well, what about for this? And I was sort of like, oh, it hadn't even really occurred to me that you all were kind of using it, or maybe there were useful ways to use it. And so I quickly realized a zero tolerance approach is maybe not realistic, certainly not how people are thinking about it. And maybe then becomes I'm setting myself up for failure if I decide, oh, we're never going to use it. Students should never use it.
Out of that realization, Sarah felt like the entire school needed to say something to students about AI, to give them broad guidance about what responsible AI use looked like, what was considered cheating, what wasn't, how to think about all the complicated gray areas of AI use that we've talked about on this series. And she turned to the school district to see if they had any guidance to offer. It turns out the district had budget cuts, and the person at the district level who thought about curriculum for secondary education had left. It's a long story, but eventually, after several months, she got a PowerPoint back from a consultant at the district.
And what she shared with me was how teachers can use AI to create rubrics and how teachers can use AI to lesson plan. And I was a little bit like, I am a little concerned that that's the teacher facing, like, look at this cool new thing. Look at all the things you can do with it.
Sarah thought this was totally inadequate. It didn't address cheating at all. There was no acknowledgement of the many downsides that she sees with AI. She wanted the district to show some leadership around those challenges, and in her opinion, they weren't. So she just decided, I have to take the lead on this. That fall, she began working on a responsible AI policy with the other English teachers at the school. The policy wasn't really about punishment and sanctions because the school has a separate academic integrity policy. This was designed to express the school's values around learning. The first section listed some of the concerns around AI.
It gets things wrong all the time. It uses copyrighted works and is creative theft. It's detrimental to the environment.
Then the document has do's, positive statements of what students should do and what values they wanted the students to center.
This whole first section, like the primary do for ethical AI use is to improve as a writer. And so trying to name what does it look like to be a good writer. So, practice, go through the writing process. Get comfortable writing by hand and learn to type. Be willing to ask questions and seek help from your teachers. Read.
When I spoke with her this February, she was feeling good about how it was shaping up and getting ready to share a draft with the other department heads. But then, a few weeks later, she had a setback. She caught some students using AI on assignments, and she started to suspect that many more of her students were using AI than she'd thought. Here's how she put it in an email. I felt distrustful, angry, frustrated. All the work I'd done to encourage original thinking and to support my students' processes seemed to be going out the window as my second semester seniors decided they wanted to simply take the easy way out and let AI do all the work for them. She wasn't sure how many of her students were cheating, but she started to just be broadly suspicious. She told me a story about a student who wrote a sonnet about her family's bakery and included childhood memories of the bakery. And Sarah said she initially thought the student had just used AI to make it all up.
I'm like, so you grew up in a bakery? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, this is this really beautiful, like, really you... and then she was like, yeah, my family's bakery is called blah, blah, blah. And it's, I remember that. And I was like, okay, now I'm such an asshole because I'm sitting here interrogating this kid about her childhood memories. She'd written this beautiful poem about growing up in a bakery and I don't believe her, because this is the mindset I've gotten to where I'm like, really tell me what it means to proof a piece of bread, I felt it's crazy making.
What would your guess be of how many were using AI in a way that would make you uncomfortable?
Oh, this feels really hard. This is part of the concern is like, then you just become a paranoid person. You distrust every single thing your students give you. You start to kind of move through the world with this sense of like, everybody's cheating. Everybody's cheating. Nobody's doing the work. I can't trust anybody. And that is a terrible, terrible place to be. I really love my students and I really want to believe that they're good and ethical people who care about their learning and their process. And then I hear myself being like, I'm pretty sure everybody is cheating. Everybody's using AI to cheat. And I don't like that I believe that about myself. So then I sort of temper it by saying, oh, well, they're probably not, or they're probably just using Grammarly. But it's hard to know. I think I'm not giving you an answer because I don't like what the answer is, which is I think the majority of kids are using AI to cheat.
I just want to take a moment here and point out part of what Sarah's articulating is a kind of emotional strain. She's expressed frustration, anger, disappointment, and I think fatigue. But she made it clear to me she's not really complaining about the workload. I think she would want to participate in this responsible AI process no matter what. But one thing she communicated to me about this experience was a sense that her district and her administration just didn't want to hear about the challenges associated with AI, or any of the struggles that she and other department heads and teachers have been dealing with.
I feel like there was this real disconnect about the things that were happening for us as department chairs, the major financial crisis that we're still in, the fact that the California Department of Education holds the purse strings. All of our new teachers were hired on temporary contracts, so they all had to reapply for our jobs. And a lot of them said, I don't want to do that. That feels really disrespectful. They were offered temporary contracts again for this coming year. So like a lot of teachers just left. I don't mean to talk badly about the district, but we're really dealing with the realities of like, wow, it is really hard to be a teacher in San Francisco right now. And here are all the things we're dealing with. AI is one of those pieces. And yet we're never having conversations like that are facilitated at the kind of larger levels. So we have to have those conversations ourselves.
I admire enormously Sarah Fall's willingness to dive right in and solve the problem. I mean, maybe if the job of an urban high school teacher was a reasonable workload, we might say to each other, yeah, that's fine. Like, have her join a committee. That's like when challenges come up in workplaces, that's what happens is people get in small groups and solve them. But sometimes I think the public doesn't understand like just how close to the margins of people's time schools operate under. Like, there is not a lot of extra bandwidth. There are not a lot of extra hours. Many people in these systems, especially the busiest, most committed ones, are really kind of putting their all into it. And it's hard to keep asking them for more. But I'm also sympathetic to the district leaders, the school leaders in San Francisco, because if they put out a policy, it will be scrutinized in a way that's different than what Sarah Falls and her colleagues will put out in their high school. And so they feel a lot of pressure to get things right. And it's a moment with the new technology where it's really hard to get right because we really don't know what the answers are. You know, it also sounded like Sarah Falls wasn't really happy with the kind of like, well, here's a bunch of great things that you can do. Hope this is much better. Good luck. And that didn't feel like it was sort of wrestling with the complexity as well. But wrestling with the complexity takes a lot of time.
You know, I think you're making a really good point, Justin. And I think that what the teachers have largely said is they're not necessarily looking for their district to figure it all out for them. I think what they're looking for is a sense of like, we hear you and that's challenging and let's figure it out together. You know, some districts have devoted 1 or 2 days of paid professional development to talk about AI, including the challenges around cheating. And, you know, it's not like they can solve all the problems in a couple of days, but the teachers who have had those opportunities say at least they had the space to have conversations with their colleagues. And at least they feel like their district has their back and is thinking about AI too. There's another thing that Sarah said that I've heard from other teachers too, which is that bringing up the challenges around AI, some teachers feel like when they bring that up to their administration or to the district that they are kind of treated like troublemakers. You know, like, just take this guidance that we gave you about how to use AI to save time and like get back to work and shut up. You know, we don't want to hear about it. And I suspect that's not what the district is trying to communicate to the teachers, but that's how some of the teachers say that they have felt.
Well, one of the hardest things to hear about these stories is that school districts have very different levels of resources to solve problems. More affluent districts have more people, have fewer budgetary crises, have less complex problems to solve in terms of the number of students in their district who are homeless, who are transitioning between districts, who have, you know, special learning needs and special disabilities. You know, so I think it brings us back to what you started with, which is, in the moment in which generative AI arrived, schools had lots of challenges. More affluent schools had actually largely resolved the challenges of the pandemic, and schools serving kids further from opportunity, there's just less bandwidth to deal with a new thing, and the list of things that you have to deal with is longer to begin with. And this observation that schools that serve more affluent students are more capable, have more resources to integrate a new technology, there's decades of research to show that that is what happens with every generation of technology. From what we see from history, new technologies disproportionately benefit the affluent. They disproportionately benefit people with the financial, social, and technical capital to take advantage of new innovations. And in this case, it could be that some of the most serious harms from the technology are incurred in classrooms where teachers have the fewest resources to deal with the bypassing of learning that happens when students use AI in unwise ways.
One frustration I've heard from several teachers, including Sarah Falls, is that they think their school or district has adopted a viewpoint promoted by Silicon Valley and the AI developers about the inevitability of AI technology. AI is the future. There's no point opposing it, and we need to teach our kids how to use it. And if you remember, in our first episode, we played a quote from Sam Altman, who is a venture capitalist and a founder and CEO of OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. And he argued that schools had wisely chosen to embrace AI technology. And I played what Sam Altman said about that for Sarah Falls.
Days, at least weeks, but I think days after the release of ChatGPT, school districts were like falling all over themselves to ban ChatGPT. The thing that happened after that, quickly, was school districts and teachers saying, hey, actually, we made a mistake. And this is a really important part of the future of education. And the benefits far outweigh the downside. And not only are we unbanning it, we're encouraging our teachers to make use of it in the classroom. We're encouraging our students to get really good at this tool because it's going to be part of the way people live. And, then there was like a big discussion about what the kind of path forward should be. And that is just not something that could have happened without releasing.
In this context, Sam Altman is like so much of society that, as far as I know, he's never been a public school teacher, and yet he's decided what teachers should do in the classroom. We're used to that. Policymakers have long told us what we should and shouldn't do.
Part of what Sarah is laughing at here is the idea that there's been any kind of big, thoughtful discussion about AI involving school districts. That just hasn't been her experience. But she also takes issue with the idea that we should just uncritically embrace generative AI.
I think and I hear a lot of this. This is going to be a really important tool. And I want to ask people, why? How does this make us better or smarter? Because right now I don't see it. I don't think it's making us better and smarter. I think it's giving people more time. But how is this truly going to push us forward to be the kinds of thinkers that are going to make change that this world needs? I'm not sure I see it. So maybe. I think it's possible that AI will help us cure cancer. I think it's possible that AI will help us contact life in other galaxies. I love the idea of that. I really do. I think some of this is super fascinating. And we need really, really smart people who are going to kind of push the technology of this. And we're not going to get really, really smart people if at the high school level we're just letting AI do the work for us. The students still need to learn how to be thinkers, creatives, how to be innovators. And that's not going to come through saying, oh, haha, I don't have to do that.
As you can hear, Sarah is skeptical about all the promised benefits of AI, and she echoes what we've heard from many teachers. In a lot of ways, AI has made their job harder, not easier. And they can point to very simple ways in which their schools could use more resources, like more teachers or better plumbing or an academic dean. Meanwhile, there's all this money pouring into edtech and AI, and it feels like our collective priorities are just way off.
Why is it that my friend who was an upper level, manager at Google, can go to work and can get fed sushi and filet mignon, and I can't even wash my hands in hot water? I mean, literally, like I go to the bathroom and I only have cold water to wash my hands. Our priorities aren't in taking care of public school students and public school teachers. As a society, they're just not. We're putting countless resource into the private sector. And these kids here, like, you know, this kid who just brought me this candy cane, like this sweet kid who, like, I've struggled. Like, the fact that she brought me a candy cane is a big deal because at the beginning of the year, she, like, hated me. You know, and I've like stuck with it. I've stuck with her, and she just brought me a candy cane. Like, this is the work. This is the work of what we have to do, right? And like, I don't know. Sorry, I'm getting a little preachy. I really care about public education, and we just have our priorities so wrong. How many millions of dollars are we spending on creating ChatGPT, and we can't even give my students hot water?
So, Justin, I think Sarah's observation here raises a big question. And even if you narrow the focus to AI-powered education technology, the investment in the last 3 years is estimated at somewhere between $6 and $10 billion. So why are we investing so much money in ed tech and not investing in some of these urgent low-tech needs, which that money would absolutely help address?
Jesse, you've asked a big question, and I'll give you a little bit of a glib answer. And the answer is capitalism. Our economy is set up so that venture capitalists invest in endeavors that they think will bring returns. The two main things that schools spend money on are teachers and curriculum. If entrepreneurs think that they can make something better than teachers and curriculum, then they hope that schools will spend money on those products rather than what they're spending on right now. But there's another answer, which I think speaks to probably the most maybe honorable hopes of education technology investors, which is when you scan across the state of schools, there's all kinds of reasons to be disillusioned and disappointed. They don't do all the things that we want them to do. They don't do them well enough. They're really hard to improve. And so it's just an incredibly compelling idea that a new technology could emerge and it could just sweep away the past. It could just wipe away these dysfunctional old schools. And instead, we could be transformed into this new golden era of wonderful, extremely well-functioning schools that work better, that make people happier and all kinds. I mean, I find that story incredibly compelling as a human. I don't find it that compelling as a researcher, as a historian, because it's the same story that people have told: the film strip, the radio, the computer, the iPad, the tablet, the web. It just comes up over and over again, and unfortunately, it's never true. Here's what I predict will happen in the future. Schools will make some adoptions of AI, and so we're going to see some limited benefits, and we're going to see some harms and some problems, and then society will have to do what it does with every generation of technology and say, like, what kind of investments do we want to make in our future? And it will be hard to encourage people to make big investments in public education because people feel like their property taxes are already too high. And the people who are going to make all of this work on limited resources and a limited budget are classroom teachers who, regardless of what challenges we have and regardless of what we throw at them, like, love the young people that they work with. They love the subjects that they study and teach. And they're going to go out there every day and try to make the best education system they have with whatever temperature water society affords them.
Well, Justin, this is episode 7 of The Homework Machine, a mini-series in Teach Lab. Thanks for giving over your podcast to this endeavor. It's been fun co-hosting with you.
You've acquitted yourself brilliantly.
Thank you. I'm honored that you think so. Any final thoughts before we sign off on The Homework Machine?
Well, there are 3 groups of people that I'm just enormously thankful for. It was extremely generous of teachers, school principals, educators to spend their time with us, helping us understand what these changes look like down at the classroom level. I am especially grateful to the 30 or so students that we talked to, especially those that were willing to let us use their voices on air. It reminds me that when we ask students
serious questions, and we promise them that we will take their ideas seriously. They have some real wisdom to share with us. And I think the students that we heard from over the course of the last 7 episodes have really enriched our understanding of what these changes look like in schools. And then, of course, I'm enormously grateful to our listeners who make all this possible, who give us great feedback, who share what we're doing. And hopefully these conversations have helped parents and community members figure out more what's going on in schools and help educators figure out the pathways they might take to wrestle with these challenges and keep making schools better.
This episode was produced by Stephen Jackson and me, Jesse Dukes. We had editing from Ruxandra Guidi and Alexandra Salomon. Reporting and research from Holly McDede and Andrew Meriwether. Additional reporting from Chris Bagg, Andrew Parsons, Natasha Esteves, and Marnette Federis. Sound design and music supervision by Stephen Jackson. Production help from Yebu G. Administrative support from Jessica Rondon. Special thanks to Josh Sheldon and Eric Klopfer. The research and reporting you heard in this episode was supported by the Spencer Foundation, the Kapor Foundation, the Jameel World Education Lab, the Social and Ethical Responsibility of Computing Initiative at MIT, and the RAISE Initiative, Responsible AI for Social Empowerment in Education, also at MIT. And we had support from a company that makes artificial intelligence, Google's Academic Research Awards program. The Homework Machine is a program of the Teaching Systems Lab, Justin Reich Director, located at MIT. Justin, back in March of this year, we learned that a mutual friend, Mac Jernigan, had died at age 82. And you suggested that we dedicate this series to him. And I love that idea. And for our listeners who don't know Mac, can you give us just a brief biographical sketch of Mac Jernigan?
Mac taught me how to sail. He was a sailing instructor at the camp that I went to as a child and that I later worked at when I was older. You worked there with me as well. Mm-hmm. So he spent half the year taking folks on charter trips in the Caribbean and half the year spending time at this summer camp in Maine teaching kids like me how to sail.
Well, and he was a trained theologian. He went to divinity school and very much an amateur philosopher who liked nothing more than having just long conversations, often about how the world was changing, often about how the way the world was changing made him uncomfortable. And one of his themes was the role that technology played in an evolving world. And he imparted this sense that every technology has impacts. You can almost always find positive impacts on the broader culture, and you can almost always find negative impacts, but that our society tends to fixate and focus on the positive and ignore the negative. And I think that that idea and that habit of looking for both the positive impacts and the negative impacts of a given technology undergirds this podcast.
And where Mac often thought to look for those negative implications was in how technologies replaced the ways that we connected with each other. That the core of our well-being, the core of our civil society was how we talked directly to one another. And that machines that take away from our connecting with one another, take away from something that's really important for us to feel well as individuals and for us to function well as communities.
Sail on, Mac.